This presentation provides information on how to look up data on the numbers of animals who are used in research facilities in the United States. This information is maintained by the United States government, and it is our legal right to have access to and to see this information. However, the tools that allow us access to this information can often be challenging to locate and difficult to use. So this tutorial provides a background of the information that is available, as well as a brief tutorial on how to access that information. The reason understanding the number of animals used in research facilities in the United States is important is because it sheds light on the amount of animal research or vivisection that is currently happening in the United States. It allows citizens to understand what type of research is happening in the areas in which they live, and can also shed light on the type of species used and highlights the overuse of non-human animals in research, as well as the often the abuses that these animals face in these situations. This presentation will briefly provide background information on the Animal Welfare Act, which is the main law that requires reporting of animal usage numbers. I will also discuss annual report data and inspection reports, which are the types of forms that you can get from the government that have information about animal usage numbers. I will explain as well how these reports can be read and how to understand the information on them. Finally, I will discuss what is missing from these reports. This will be followed by a tutorial on how to actually look up these animal usage numbers and how to download inspection reports. So, what is the Animal Welfare Act? The Animal Welfare Act is the only federal law that is comprehensive in protecting animals used in most industries, including the research industry. While there are few laws for specific species of animals, such as dogs and horses, the Animal Welfare Act, or the AWA, is the only comprehensive law dictating how animals are used in a wide variety of industries. When it comes to research, what is covered under the Animal Welfare Act is how to treat many warm-blooded animals. However, it does not necessarily cover all those animals who are used in research. In terms of research, this law also requires inspections and reporting of lab facilities. Though there are some protections for animals who are used in research, these protections are minimal. For example, the Animal Welfare Act defines an animal differently than you or I might define an animal. It specifically states that certain species are not considered animals under this law by the federal government. Such species that are not included animals under this law include mice, rats, birds, any animal labeled as livestock, many farm animals, and more. Furthermore, oversight is minimal. It does require that when research is done in certain facilities, there is an IACAC committee. An IACAC stands for Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. This is a committee that is formed and run within an institution. So for example, if research is occurring at a university, the university will have their own IACAC committee. This states that IACAC committees must inspect only once every 6 months. This means that it's only ensured that there will be 2 annual inspections. And these are not inspections that are done by the federal government, rather they are inspections that are done by the committees appointed by the institution that is being inspected. This is problematic in many ways. Outside of the AWA, the federal government does inspections, however these can be quite minimal. The federal government is currently using something called a risk-based inspection system. In their own words, this system means that it uses several objective criteria, included but not limited to past compliance history, to determine the minimum inspection frequency at each licensed and registered facility. Facilities meeting the criteria for low frequency intervals are subject to inspection once every year or every 2 to 3 years, or in some cases only when they receive a complaint. Facilities determined to require high-frequency inspections are subject to inspection as often as every 3 months. Those in the middle are inspected about once a year. What this means is that some facilities may not even be inspected once a year by the federal government. Furthermore, it's important to highlight that when facility inspections occur, it does not necessarily mean that animals are viewed. Sometimes inspections occur of facilities when animals are not being held. Furthermore, these inspections do not look over all animals at the facility. They randomly choose which parts of the facility that they look at. So often, only 1 or 2 research experiments or labs might be viewed, and sometimes the welfare of no animals is directly checked on. It is also important to highlight that the Animal Welfare Act is explicitly focused on looking at teaching and research as it pertains to living animals. This image here is the front of a catalog from 2018 in which people in the education industry can purchase animals who have been preserved for the use in classroom dissections and other types of scientific experiments. This type of use of animals who are already dead receives no oversight, and so the numbers of animals who are used in this way is not recorded by the federal government. The fact that these types of numbers are not recorded by the federal government, and that many species of animals are not recorded by the federal government, means that we don't actually know how much research is happening to animals in this country. Thinking just of live animal research, so that research that happens on animals while they are living, considering the fact that so many species are not covered by the Animal Welfare Act, it is estimated that close to 85 to 95% of all research conducted on animals is not overseen by the federal government, and the number of animals used in these ways is not known. Of the limited data that is available, here's what we know. We know how many animals are used and what species those animals are. There's also a sense of what pain levels were experienced by the animals during the experiments that were conducted on them. However, we do not know much about their enclosures and whether they are comfortable in those settings. We also don't know about anything that happens to them while they are in transport from the breeding facility or the wild where they were captured on their way into the research lab. We also have information about inspection reports. We know if there were any welfare violations and what they were. However, the inspection reports available online are very limited. Only uncontested reports are available, and reports are generally pulled offline after about a year. This means if a facility is accused of having an animal welfare violation, or they're cited with having an animal welfare violation and they disagree with it, this report is typically pulled offline until the dispute is resolved. Because these disputes can take a long time to resolve, it is often not resolved until after the date at which that year's inspection reports have been pulled offline. So the inspection reports that are available are minimal and are only a snapshot, likely missing the biggest animal welfare violations. There's also historical usage data available online, which records past animal usage annual reports and organizes the data by state and year. In a minute, I'm going to show you how to look up annual report data, but it first would be helpful if you understood what you're looking at when you see it. When you look up annual report data, you will get something that looks like this. It's going to have information on the date. Usually it will be the former fiscal year that's available here. However, if report data was not included that year or is not online for some reason, it might be from a prior fiscal year. So it's always worth it to look at this fiscal year. You'll also see the research facility and the address here. Now, it's important that you understand that the address is not the address necessarily of the specific location where the research happens. Large facilities, this is the University of Minnesota. Large facilities like the University of Minnesota often have multiple research sites. And so this is the office of the building where the business is conducted, the business of talking with the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, who oversees the AWA and compliance with that law. So what's reported here is information about all of their research facilities together. This is the first page of the report. Some reports are only one page, however, larger facilities using lots of species will have longer reports because there's a line for each species of animal. So you can see the animal species are listed here, and there's columns across with different types of information and data in them. And I will explain this information now. The first column is column A, and it tells you the species of animal. The second column, B, identifies the number of animals held but not used. So these are animals that might be purchased but aren't ready for, the experiment is not ready, or they might be held for the sake of breeding other animals. The final animal usage report numbers don't actually contain animals in column B. Column C is the number of animals used in which, according to the researchers, there's no pain, distress, or use of pain-relieving drugs. It's important to keep in mind that the idea of what causes pain or distress is in the minds of the researchers and the IACAC committees. It does not include any of the distress or stress that might occur in terms of being housed in cages or in transport to being researched on. Nor does it include the basic distress that might occur when handled by lab technicians or in terms of being removed from their enclosures to be part of these experiments. D provides the number of animals who are used in which there is known and identified pain involved in the course of the experiment, and the animals are provided with pain-relieving drugs. Column E is those experiments in which pain is involved, but the animals who are listed in this column did not receive any pain-relieving drugs. These types of experiments are allowed when the researcher provides a justification that providing pain relief to the animal would somehow, in their mind, hurt the research outcome. Column E represents the total number of animals used in research that's reported, and that adds up columns C, D, and E, and again, that is excluding column B. So when you see reports of animal usage numbers, it is covering just columns C, D, and E, so it's important to keep in mind that there might be additional animals in those facilities, and of course, all those animals who are not covered by the Animal Welfare Act are not counted, and so they are not included. It's always safe with large research facilities to assume that the animals who you see in column E represents only a minority of animals, and there may be up to 95% more animals in that facility. In addition to the annual report data, you are also able to access inspection report data. Inspection reports are issued when a USDA inspector has come in and found some sort of a problem within the site, something that violates the Animal Welfare Act. It is important to note that these inspection reports are minimal because, as previously mentioned, if someone can test them, they're not available online. Furthermore, when inspectors do go to these sites, they just do random inspections of maybe 1 or 2 labs or vivariums, which is where animals are kept. So when we do see inspection reports that note that there's trouble, we should be particularly concerned. Importantly, many times these inspection reports simply cite that the facility did not provide information or was not available to allow the inspector to access labs. So oftentimes, even though they record having inspected that site within the time frame that they've decided to inspect it, based on their risk-based inspection system, the inspection doesn't always occur. These inspection reports are available for research facilities as well as other places that use animals that are similar to research facilities, such as zoos or other types of places where animals are displayed. So they're similar in that they keep animals for human use, or breeding facilities that are directly tied to producing animals for research facilities. Importantly, only the research facility themselves has their name attached to their inspection report. All of these black bars here that you see, and that you'll see on most inspection reports, are places where information has been redacted. Importantly, Even though an inspection report might discuss a problem that's there, when it's made available to the public, though it might locate where it is, and that might be able to help you identify what organization it's from, it does not actually tell you the customer ID number or the certificate number. Or if you can figure out, for example, maybe it's at the University of Minnesota, it won't tell you the site number. So it becomes very challenging to actually identify where these animal abuses have occurred. So let's take a closer look at an inspection report. Here's an inspection report, and again, much of this key information is taken off of it. However, we do know that it's some sort of animal dealer or exhibitor, so perhaps something like a petting zoo, or they're selling animals for some reason. This is a routine inspection. We, again, don't know exactly where it is. So it will tell you what type of violation it is. A direct violation is a violation directly to the animal. Here we see that a rabbit had trouble hopping in her enclosure. Upon examination, there was a lump and the licensee had not observed it, or the limp. Not thoroughly observed. Then they explain why it's a problem. Here we see repeat means it's a repeated problem. Direct means, again, it's direct violation toward the animals themselves. So here, a goat, sheep, llama, and alpaca enclosure. The water containers were empty or frozen over with ice. Once asked to give them the water, the inspector noticed the animals rushed to get some water. So these sorts of things are noted, and then the inspection ends, and after this, the facilities typically are just given a time frame in which to correct these things. Importantly, often when you look at inspection reports, you might be told, rather than the violations towards the animals, you might even be told that they didn't inspect any animals. Towards the end of the report, they will be clear about exactly which animals they did inspect at that location. And this can give you some information about the site, since so little information is available. So it's clear from this that this is probably some sort of a petting zoo that is in Le Sueur, Minnesota. Understand how to read the reports that are coming from the USDA. It's important to understand how to look up those reports and how to get them in the first place. The USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection website is the website where you can find all of this information. It's important as you go to this website and look at information that you download it if it's information you might want to refer to again, because this website changes often. And in the past, the government has pulled down all data, and so it's not clear that this data will always be available. Going to this main website is the place to start. Then once you're on this website, you can get to the main places we want to look in order to look up animal usage numbers. On the left-hand sidebar, there is a link to the USDA Animal Care Public Search Tool. That will give you the most up-to-date available data. You could also look at the Research Facility Annual Summary and Archive Reports, which will give you archived annual summary reports listed by state and year. So here we are on the website. And you can see here, if you want to know more about the Animal Welfare Act or to look into the other specific laws that might have to do with some special species of animals, such as the Horse Protection Act, you can find that information on this page and on this sidebar. Briefly, I want to show you the annual summary page and archive. We're going to spend less time on this today, but just so you know that you can access it and what you can access. This is not an updated website. However, it provides a brief summary of what information is in each column, which we already discussed. And then you can also get usage summary reports by research facility by year. You could also get them by state by year. So if you were to pull up 2017, you can see by species, by state, how many animals are used across the United States. So this isn't very fine-grained data. However, it is a good summary if you want to look at historical trends over time. Now I want to do an overview of what you can do with the USDA Animal Care Public Search Tool. Now keep in mind the government does not promise to always have this available, so it's important that you download anything that you see here and keep in mind that what I'm showing you today may change. Here are the main links available to you, and the ones we're going to focus on are research facility animal usage reports and the inspection reports. However, briefly, I'll show you the list of persons licensed so that you understand what all is available. It is not just research facilities that have to report to the Animal Welfare Act, though research facilities have the most data available online. So if you go into the list of registrants, you can see in the United States, every single organization that has to report to the USDA according to the Animal Welfare Act. Now keep in mind they don't have to report all animals who they use, only those animals covered by the Animal Welfare Act. And as you can see, the data on them is minimal, but there are a lot of them listed here. So these include things like zoos, breeding facilities, petting farms, some pet stores if they're used for entertainment, aquariums, and etc. And the list goes on. So returning, let's look at research facility animal use annual reports. How do we look these up? First, here's the search tool. So if you don't care about year, you don't have to select a year. I want the newest data. If you know exactly what the organization name is, you can go ahead and type it in here. However, it's important to keep in mind, if they typed in that customer name differently than you do, you're not going to get data on it. It's not going to show up. So if they accidentally added an extra space, or if they wrote in U of Minnesota instead of University of Minnesota, it won't show up. It's always safest, if you know where your organization is located, to first refine and look it up by state, and then find out its customer number or its certificate number from this search. So you can view registrants or view annual reports. I'm going to start by viewing registrants. Once you click that button, here now I've gotten a list of all places in the state of Minnesota. You can see here the name, the customer number that the USDA has, as well as the certificate number. It tells you when the certificate was started and whether or not this organization is currently active. It will say active or canceled. It'll say canceled if the organization is no longer there. It also provides their main address, but please keep in mind that this is their business office address and not always where the research is actually being conducted. However, it's a good point of contact if you would like to contact these places. These query reports on the side should bring you to their animal usage number. Sometimes that query report function doesn't work very well and does not take you to this page, so it's always helpful to go ahead and write down the registrant information in case you have to do a search by viewing annual reports. Here this tells you the last year of data that information was collected and how many animals were available at that location. It's important to note here that they don't make it particularly easy to keep track of the names of the organizations and this information. As you can see, the name attached to the organization is no longer here. So it's very important to write everything down. So this is the Mayo Clinic we were just looking at. Since we've been looking at the University of Minnesota today, let's go ahead and see what's going on there. Here we can see that their customer number is 547 and their certificate number is 401R0005. And this provides a general list of numbers of columns C, D, and E who have been used in research at the University of Minnesota at last count. These are the animals that were currently there and alive and being used in research. If you click on View Report, it will give you their breakdown. And this is the breakdown again that goes by specific species and which pain level they're in. And now keep in mind again, this does not have those animals who are not covered under the Animal Welfare Act. So no invertebrates, cold-blooded animals, birds, mice, rats, or livestock are going to be included here. Now, if you would like to see any of the reports, if there's any violations on this, that's a different search that you need to do. So you would go back to home and you would use this search feature. inspection report. So if you had written down their customer name or their certificate number, you can enter it in here. You can also choose whether you want to look at all facilities. Again, names are only attached to research facilities. And if you want to refine by state, or if you just wanted to look at research facilities. You can see, looking at all facilities, it's going to give you a very long list. Here again, it's just giving you registrants. If you want to see the actual inspection reports, you then have to push this button. Now, again, only those places who are currently doing research on animals in something deemed as a research facility are going to have their site name and their legal name recorded. All these other types of licenses and dealers, places like zoos and breeders, their information as to where they're located is redacted. If you want to just focus on research facilities, keep in mind that research facilities are broken up between agricultural research facility, federal research facility, and sometimes in Veterans Administration hospitals, there's research going on. When you view the inspection reports, it gives you information on direct, non-critical, and critical types of compliance issues. Direct issues are ones where direct animal care is harmed. Non-critical issues are issues that they deem not immediate to deal with, and critical issues are ones they deem immediate to deal with. It's important to note, however, something that they consider a non-critical issue is simply not being able to do an inspection because no one was available when they showed up, or the organization did not provide them with the documentation they were supposed to be provided with. It's also important to note that the ones that are available almost always have zeros in all of these columns or in the non-critical or critical, because whenever a more direct or problematic compliance issue comes up, if the organization contests it, then that inspection report is pulled offline until it's dealt with. It's also important to point out that each customer number might have multiple labs. So if an inspection is happening at the University of Minnesota, there are a lot of different research sites. For example, here we see the St. Paul site, and here we see the Duluth site. They may not inspect all sites equally, and each site will get its own inspection report. So when you're looking at just registrant information and the total number of animals used, it combines animals who are at all of these sites for the annual report. However, when you look at inspection reports, it looks separately at each site. And again, if there's certain license types, even if it's used for research, they might pull them out of the data, making it hard to know who is where and who is doing what. Because these are so often pulled off when there are issues, it makes sense if you're tracking this data to check here and to check here regularly. When you want to see an inspection report, you simply click this button and it'll give you the inspection report. It's important to note that they don't require that you have to see someone who's in charge of a lab, such as a veterinarian. For example, during this inspection, which was a routine inspection conducted in February of 2019, they simply went to one location at Ridgewater College and interviewed a college lab assistant. This is problematic for many reasons, because oftentimes the people who they talk to are not experts on what is happening at the facility. Hopefully this information is helpful and you're able to use it in order to better understand what is happening in terms of research in your area. Also like to point out that if you are interested in looking at this information, you can follow up at the website for Progress for Science, where you can find more information on animal research happening in California and Minnesota, as well as maps of research happening in certain locations that will give you information such as what congressional districts research facilities are in and who you can contact if you would like this to stop. You can get more information at www.progressforscience.com. Thank you.